Half of the SaaS licenses your company is paying for haven't been opened in 90 days. And in logistics specifically, the median adoption rate for B2B software is just 17%. 17 out of every 100 users. And the rest are all paying for software they never log into. Today's episode isn't about how to vet vendors better or select better. It's about every forwarder that we talk to. They're already doing that, but badly. But it's about the other half of the deal. What happens after you sign? Welcome to the DocFlow Dispatch. I'm Pauline, co-founder of DocFlow.
And I'm Giel Gabriels, SDR at DocFlow. I talk to freight forwarders every day, and I'm the show's resident researcher.
This week, we're tackling the single biggest objection that we hear in sales calls, and it's called shelfware fear. It's the fear that you'll buy a tool, sign a contract, run a kickoff, but then 3 months later, nobody on your team is using it.
And it came up again last week. We had a meeting with a prospect who said it directly. He said, I want to avoid buying yet another package we don't get enough out of.
Mm-hmm. And that's the fear in one sentence. So we did the research, we looked at the data, and the answer surprised us.
It surprised me a lot, actually. The advice industry has been telling forwarders to vet harder before signing. That's not where the leak is.
No, it's not where the leak is. The leak is in the 90 days after the contract. So that's what we're talking about today.
Yes, Pauline, I want to start with the simplest version of this. Forget software for a second. Think about the gym membership in January.
Okay, go on.
So, everybody signs up with the right intention. By March, half the members have stopped going. The gym still charges them. The members still feel guilty walking past the building. And here's the thing. Nobody calls customer support to complain about a bad gym. They blame themselves. The direct debit just keeps running.
Mm-hmm. And that is exactly what shelfware looks like inside a forwarder. Nobody escalates a we never used it problem. The cost just sits in the IT budget until the renewal comes around.
Right, and the renewal conversation goes one of two ways. So either someone fights to cancel it, which is awkward because they signed it, or they renew quietly and hope this year is different.
Hope this year is different. That is how a lot of logistics IT budgets actually work.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I keep coming back to that gym analogy. So the thing that determines whether you stay a member isn't the contract. It's whether you go 3 times in the first 2 weeks. After that, the habit forms or it doesn't. We'll get back to why it matters in a few minutes.
Okay, so let me ask the question that a listener would ask. When you say shelfware, are we talking about whole platforms or just unused features inside platforms that people do log into?
Yeah, it's actually both. So whole platforms is the obvious case. You bought a TMS, 10 people were supposed to use it to actually do. The other case is more subtle. So you bought a visibility platform, your ops team uses the tracking dashboard, but nobody opens the demurrage module that costs an extra 10,000 euros.
Mm-hmm. So that's more like module shelfware, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Module shelfware. And it's everywhere. But let me give you the headline number first. So across all SaaS, 53% of licenses go unused. That's from Zelo's 2025 SaaS Management Index.
53%, so that's more than half.
More than half. And about half of those have been untouched for 90 days or longer. So, and the average company wastes around $40,000 a year on shelfware and redundant tools.
40,000, that is not a small number for a mid-size or small company. That's a higher, maybe even expansion to warehouse. That is real money sitting on the IT line that's actually not doing anything.
Yeah, but now maybe the good news. License utilization has improved. So it went from 47% in 2024 to 54% in 2025. So companies are getting a bit better, actually.
So 7 points in a year.
Yeah, 7 points in a year. But the gap is still huge. So almost half of every SaaS contract is still wasted.
Okay, and logistics specifically, what's the number there?
Yeah, it's worse than average. 17%.
Wait, hold, 17% Okay, so out of every 100 users a vendor sells to, 83% of them, roughly then, never touches the product.
And when you look at digital transformation projects in logistics, 70% of them fail outright. And that's from the Slash Experts 2026
So
report.
70%, that's a lot higher than what I had assumed. And what is the failure here exactly? So, like, what counts as a failed project?
Failure means the project was cancelled, ran way over budget, or hit less than 20% of its predicted revenue gain. So failed implementations achieve under 20% of the value they promised.
Okay, so the buyer signs the contract expecting 100 and then they get less than 20.
Yeah, less than 20, and the other 80 looks like shelfware. And that's the thing about shelfware. It's invisible until renewal. So by the time someone notices, it's been 6 or 12 months of paying for nothing.
And maybe by then the original sponsor of the project might have left the company or moved roles or just stopped caring. And then the tool becomes nobody's problem.
Yeah, so nobody's problem is worst possible situation for a piece of enterprise software.
And the worst. So if the buy decision isn't really the problem, then where is the problem actually located?
Yeah, let's get into that maybe.
Right. So here's the reframe. The fear is rational, but the fix is miscredited.
What do you mean by miscredited?
So most advice on shelfware will tell you to vet harder before signing and get more references, maybe run a longer pilot and ask deeper technical questions. But every forwarder that we talk to actually already does this. Maybe sometimes not very well, but they all do these steps.
And what does it look like when they do these steps?
If they do it badly, then it's talking to maybe one or two references picked by the vendor, both of whom are advocates.
And yeah, those things make the buyer feel like they did their due diligence.
They feel like due diligence, but they really aren't, because none of them tell you whether your team will actually use the tool in March next year.
Yeah, so the leak isn't in procurement.
The leak isn't in procurement. The leak is actually in days 1 to 90. So after the kickoff email goes out and before the renewal conversation, that window, that's where shelfware is born. So the buyers, they fear non-adoption. The vendor doesn't show them well enough what adoption would look like in their numbers. And then the deal dies. Or worse, it gets signed without conviction or runs a half-hearted rollout and then becomes shelfware.
Yeah, and once it's signed without conviction, the rollout is doomed before it even starts. So the internal champion is already defensive. They're going to underinvest in the rollout because they're not sure they made the right call.
Right, so the conviction problem actually starts before the contract.
Okay, so let's talk about what good looks like. We pulled some benchmarks. There's a 30, 60, 90 framework that actually works.
Great, let's walk through it.
All right, so day 30, you want 40 to 60% of the intended users to be active. Active meaning they've done a meaningful thing in the tool, not just logged in, but done something real.
Okay, 40 to 60%. So if I'm rolling Docflow out to 20 operations people, by day 30, I want at least 8 to 12 of them inside the tool once a week.
Exactly, yeah. And then we have day 60. You want 70 to 80% retention of those early users. So they're still coming back, new use cases are spreading inside the team, and people are finding things you didn't train them on.
Right, yes. That last bit is actually the signal. When users start using the tool for things you didn't show them, that is adoption, and that's not training anymore.
And that's perfect. So then we come to day 90, and you should see usage shifting from old workflows to the new ones. So the Excel sheets is dying. Nobody's emailed the carrier to ask where the box is. The tool is replacing behavior and not adding to it.
Right, replacing behavior, not adding to it. That is really the key line here. And what about the early signal that we talked about? Is there one number that can predict whether you'll get there?
There actually is one, and it's the most useful stat in this whole research brief. So features that get repeat usage in the first 7 days have a 3.2 times higher 90-day retention.
Okay, say that again.
3.2 times higher retention if your users come back inside the tool within the first week.
Okay, so day 5 is really the day that matters. Not day 1, not day 90, but day 5.
Day 5. And if your team isn't back inside the tool by day 5, you're already losing.
This connects to the gym analogy that you used, which was, I think, 3 times in 2 weeks.
3 times in 2 weeks, kind of the same biology. So whether it's a treadmill or a tracking dashboard, the habit either forms in the first week or it really doesn't.
Okay, so I want to push back on this a little bit because the obvious response to all of this is, okay, so we need to get more training, better training, more onboarding sessions, more videos, more documentation.
And?
But this is wrong, right? Because training is hours of sitting in a room watching someone show you software, and adoption is the third time someone uses the tool unprompted to solve a real problem. And those aren't the same thing, in my opinion.
Yeah. So the training metric flatters the vendor and the buyer. Everybody attended, but nobody adopted.
Right. So you can have 100% training completion and 0 adoption. Both numbers are real, but only one of them really matters.
Yeah, and I see this in the demo data too. So customers who run a 1-hour training session and feel confident at the end, 3 weeks later, half the team can't remember how to do the things they were showing.
Yeah, because they never had to do it themselves, and definitely not under real pressure.
Yeah, so they never had to do it themselves under real pressure. So training is performative and adoption is muscle memory.
Yeah.
So you only build by doing it.
So then the better question is not, did the training go well? But the better question would be, this Tuesday morning, when an operations person had a real problem, did they open DocFlow first or did they open their Excel first?
Yeah, exactly. That's really the only metric that matters.
That's the only one. And no vendor can answer it for you. Only your team's behavior can answer it.
Yeah. So there's also a structural reason for mid-size forwarders are uniquely exposed to this.
Okay, so what's the reason?
So smaller forwarders don't have in-house IT capacity to recover when adoption stalls. So there's research from Springer this year on intermodal freight platforms, and the finding is that mid-size forwarders lack the financial resources or headcount to throw a project manager at a failed rollout.
I see. So when adoption stalls in a mid-size company or mid-size forwarder, it stays stalled.
Yeah, it stays stalled. So the big carriers actually do it differently. DSV has a business change management unit with 50 certified change practitioners across 22 countries.
50 practitioners?
Yeah, 50. And they're certified through Proski, which is a recognized change management methodology. And the point is, the biggest forwarders in the world treats adoption as a permanent function, not a project, not a checklist, a real function.
I see. So it's a really big gap. Like DSV, for example, has 50 change practitioners, but the mid-size average Belgian freight forwarder has nobody.
Nobody. Maybe one IT person who's also the help desk. So the question for them is, how do you get the DSV outcome without the DSV headcount?
Okay, so that's the question we'll be talking about for the rest of this episode. Now what? We have 3 plays. We landed on 3 after going through the research. They're not glamorous necessarily, but most adoption advice, then again, is not.
All right, let me take the first one.
Go.
So, play 1. Run the first 30 days as a project, not a meeting, not a kickoff, but a project with deliverables.
Okay, so what does that mean concretely?
Yeah, so it means you define what active means before you sign the contract. So you have 3 things, 3 workflows, 3 named users, 1 metric per workflow, and if you can't write that down on 1 page, you don't have a rollout plan, you have hope.
Okay, so 3 workflows. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, sure. So workflow 1 is track containers from ETD to discharge. The owner is the import desk supervisor, and our metric is the percentage of containers updated automatically without anyone calling the carrier. And then workflow 2, we have the demurrage exposure visibility. Here, the owner is the finance contact who cares about costs. So the metric is euros at risk surfaced per week. And then our third workflow is customer status updates. So the owner is the customer service lead, and our metric will be percentage of status emails replaced by automated notifications.
Okay, yeah, that's very specific. That's 3 teams, 3 named owners, 3 specific metrics.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
And then the 30-day review meeting, that becomes a real meeting, then not just a status update, but a real review against the document.
Yeah, real review. Did we hit the workflow targets? If not, what's the gap? What changes in the next 30 days?
Okay. I'll add just one thing, which is making the 30-day owner your operations supervisor and not your IT contact.
Okay, why?
Because IT is not in the best position to catch shelfware. IT will see green dashboards. They'll see that the system is up, logins are happening. And from a technical view, everything looks healthy.
And the operation sees the truth.
Exactly. Operations sees the truth. They'll see that maybe 2 of the 3 teams stopped looking at the dashboard after week 2, or that the team is technically using the tool, but only as a read-only screen and not actually changing the way they work.
So we named operations supervisor as the day 30 owner. Put that in writing, tell the vendor.
Yeah, put it in writing, tell the vendor, and that this 30-day review meeting is with operations and not with IT. IT can join, but operations leads.
Yeah, all right. Okay, play 2. Pauline, this is yours.
So this one is a learning curve. It's demanding ROI math during the demo.
Okay, what does that mean?
So it means that the vendor takes your dossier volume, your demerge exposure, your dwell average, and really computes them on the spot together with you, with your numbers, not just a case study.
Trust is really important, so when you have the numbers, you can do that. But what if they say, we don't have those inputs from you yet?
Hand them to the vendor at minute 1, and then together in half an hour, you should be able to work out really the euro figure, and then you've learned a lot of the basics that you need to know.
Okay, all right. And then we have play 3. And this one is the most important and the hardest. Name an internal sponsor and name an internal saboteur.
Ooh, saboteur, that's a strong word.
It definitely is. Let me explain. So the sponsor is the executive who clears resources, removes blockers, and personally uses the tool. The Prosky data says programs with effective sponsors are 73% more likely to hit their objectives.
Okay, 73%, that's not a small lift.
No, it's not a small lift, and that's almost the whole game. So the part that gets missed the most is the sponsor has to actually use the tool themselves, not just buy it.
Yes, buying is not the same as sponsoring.
No, definitely not. And if the executive buys Duckflow and never logs in, the team reads that in 5 days. So they downgrade the tool to optional in their head. And that's it, you're done.
Yeah, they watch what the boss does, not what the boss says.
Exactly, they watch what the boss does, not what they say. So if the boss never opens the dashboard, the team gets the message. This is for show.
Okay, now talk to me about the saboteur.
So the saboteur is the person on your team with the most to lose if the tool works. Usually is the senior operations person who's been the go-to expert for 10 years. They know which carrier portal to check, which terminal sites are reliable, which freight forwarder you can call to find a missing box. That informal knowledge is their power. The tool threatens it.
Yeah, but they don't want to say that out loud.
Nah, they don't want to say that. They say things like, I tried it last week, it gave me the wrong ETA. Or, it doesn't have what I need for our reefers. Both might be true, neither is the reason they're not using it.
What's the real reason?
Yeah, the real reason is if the tool works, their job description changes, they become a shift supervisor instead of the indispensable expert. That's a status drop, even if the salary is the same.
So what's the move here?
So we don't fight them, don't bypass them, make them the first power user.
Yeah, give them the seat.
Yeah, exactly, give them the seat. And their fingerprints on the rollout protect the rollout. If they configure the workflows, they own the outcome, they can't quietly let it die.
Yeah, that's an unintuitive move though. So the person you're most worried about should be the person closest to the tool.
Yeah, so their resistance turns into ownership. And without that, no amount of training fixes it. DSV's Playbook isn't a secret, it's not magic. It's 2 people every Friday or 90 days with a sponsor and a converted saboteur.
2 people every Friday for 90 days.
2 people every Friday for 90 days. That's the whole thing. The sponsor and the converted saboteur in a recurring meeting, looking at usage data together. No agenda, except are we hitting the rollout plan? What's blocking us and what do we change next week?
Yeah. That's not glamorous or special, right?
No, it isn't, but it's how DSV gets the outcome and how mid-sized forwarders can get a version of it without 50 practitioners.
So if you do those 3 things, basically you've solved the buy side of shelfware. The rest is on the vendor. All right, quick recap. We landed on 3 plays.
So run the first 30 days as a project, not a meeting. 3 workflows, 3 named users, 1 metric per workflow. Operations owns day 30, IT does not.
Second, demand live ROI calculations in the demo with your own numbers and compute it together on the spot so that you really learn.
All right. And then we have to name your sponsor, then find your saboteur and put them in the first power user seat. The Prosky data says effective sponsors lift program success by 73%.
Yeah. And the reason forwarders end up with shelfware isn't that they bought the wrong tool, it's that they treated buying as the finish line.
And day 5 is the day that matters. Not day 1, not day 90, but day 5.
That's it for today. If you want to see what the ROI math actually looks like for your company with the Dogflow, then make sure to book a demo on the website.
And we'll be back next week. Until then, thank you for listening.
Take care.